symbolically, we're putting 25 years in the rearview mirror. You could choose to look at this as something a little different than just 1 year. Symbolically, you're putting a significant portion of your life in the rearview mirror this year, and you really have an opportunity to turn and look in the mirror and decide, how do you want to move into this next year? And how do you want to move into this next quarter of a century? Hey everybody, Jeff here. Before we get started, if you're getting value from the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those of you listening on podcast apps, don't forget to rate and review. Your support really helps the show reach more people, and for that, I am truly grateful. Now let's dive in.
Welcome to The Point with Jeff Spikes, the show about achieving goals, embracing growth, and finding your true path. And now, here's your host, Jeff Spikes.
Hello and welcome to The Point. This is your host, Jeff Spikes, and welcome to December. This is December 2024. It's a really exciting time if you ask me. So 2024 comes to an end at the end of this month. New Year's Eve celebration. What will that mean to you? What are you doing this month so that when you have that New Year's Eve, whatever that looks like for you, your New Year's Eve day, your New Year's Eve, what are you doing so that when you have that moment, that day, that you feel so great about everything that you're putting behind you and moving into the new year, and you feel so prepared and amazing for the new year that you just know how great it's going to be? What have you been doing to set yourself up for success? What have you been doing? That's one of the big questions that came up in journaling this week, was this idea of preparing myself. What are you doing to prepare yourself? If you were taking care of one of your children or a friend, be helping them prepare. If you're taking care of a team or a group, or you're leading a team, you're helping them prepare, and you're asking them how they're prepared all the time. What are you doing for yourself to be prepared? How's that working for you? Being prepared for a new year. Now, the end of 2024, a couple of interesting things have come up that I hadn't really clicked until now. 2024 coming to an end actually seals off, it closes out, puts behind us an entire quarter of a century. When day one of 2025 starts, it's actually the first day. On January 1st, 2025, it's actually the first day of the 26th year of this century. An entire quarter century has been put behind us when we finish out December, when we finish out this month. That felt really cool to me to think about. Another interesting that came up was the idea that the number 25, if you believe in numerology or not, it's still fun to look at. It's fun to kind of think about what numbers mean. And number 9, for any of you that don't know this, the way you do this with a year is you take all the numbers and add them up. And if they add two numbers, if they add up to more than one number, then you add those until you have a single number, and then that's the number. So 2025 is 2 plus 2 plus 5 is 9. And that is numerology, that becomes 9. It's a number of completion. It symbolizes wisdom. It's the end of a cycle. It's a great time for reflecting on lessons and making really conscious transitions. So it's no mistake, right? So for 15 plus years or longer, I've been ending years with the idea of how I'm going to go into the next year. Anytime years ago when I did diets and did all those things, I always started at the end of the year, because I didn't want to walk. I usually got fed up and done sometime earlier in the year, and I hadn't made progress. I kept trying and thinking about it and falling back, and hadn't really made progress till I got closer to the end of the year. And then I got panicked of what it was going to be like going to the next year. And I knew the holidays were coming, which meant an entirely other set of gains that I'd have to then work off. And I just would start doing these crazy diets before the holidays, and then wonder halfway through why I was doing that during the holidays. And of course, now I've learned a new way to do things, but that's how but nonetheless, what hasn't changed, what feels really right on in that story. And if you can imagine that battle and that struggle with always adding to your problems, right? With adding, saying, "Oh, with the holidays here, I'll just start till next year." And I mean, that wasn't necessarily the take, but instead of that, imagine flipping it to that moment of stress, of learning that lesson enough times of where it just doesn't work, that you feel motivated enough, intensely enough, and the sense of urgency enough of knowing what you don't want, that you just immediately turn towards, nope, it doesn't matter what's happening. I can't make this any worse. And you start a crazy diet where you're in complete restriction to yourself. And with any other type of change, right? Can you imagine walking down that path? And maybe you have. It's certainly a path that I walked, and 15 plus years ago, I decided I did that in a somewhat panicked sense of urgency way, then criticized myself for it a bit. And then it just became obvious how awesome of a strategy it was to really drive a different level of results that I wanted, because it worked. It made the next year so much more powerful than having another repeat of the other. And then I anchored that in as a way of making change. And now people call it the October theory, and there's a ton of stuff going on. Someone shared that with me in the last week or two, that my assistant started tagging a lot of things with October theory, because this is what I've been talking about. And I found out that this is a relative topic to a lot of people. So here we are, looking for the way to do this. So this theme is that idea of moving through the year in that flow state. The significant of this year's transition really is impactful, because symbolically we're putting 25 years in the rearview mirror. Symbolically, you could choose to look at this as something a little different than just 1 year. Symbolically, you're putting a significant portion of your life in the rearview mirror this year, and you really have an opportunity to turn and look in the mirror and decide, how do you want to move into this next year? And how do you want to move into this next quarter of a century? What do you want to be known for in this century? Depending on where you're at in life, that could be a great portion of your life. You might not have been here for the entire quarter of a century, and you're watching this or listening to this show. If that's the case, and you want to have, and you're going to have a full quarter of a century coming before you, what does that look like, right? So you get to have your own unique expression, your own unique experience. You get to have your own unique intentions for what will happen here. View this as an opportunity right now for reflection, closure, and an anticipation. And I want to go further than an anticipation. I want to go into what we've talked about, which is you're taking action that isn't about anticipation. It's about laying down the groundwork for what you want to have happening in 2025 is actually what happens. Being in a flow state going through the end of the year is different from all of the sudden, like putting everything on hold and doing whatever the heck it is you want. And then all of a sudden, January 1st, now let's make a change. So if you've been watching the show for a while, you're on board, you get it, you're back listening and looking for new tips and tricks. I won't bore you any further with the ideas and thoughts that we've already gotten to, but think of, if you're new, if you're just now listening to this, there's been 2 or 3 months of work on this to really establish this consciousness around what type of intention you're spending in your life and how you can make things smoother, easier, and better for you and those that you love. The whole focus of designing strengths, which is the workbook that I use with clients and that we have for sale and that you can work through, is this idea of using these smaller time frame goals to really choose ways to move forward that are within your greatest strengths, so that you're creating more of the nuance of yourself. And in many of you have found this year, as we've been practicing and working on this and allowing better flow, that so one of the greatest things you can do sometimes is to hold back one of your greatest strengths until you're confident that it's when it is most valued and it's best to actually move forward with. So imagine only utilizing your greatest strengths in the best way when it's being highly valued. Some people are very successful and even independently wealthy because they focus on what they're absolutely the best at, and they make sure they're being compensated accurately for that gifting that they have. Where are you expending? Where are you moving your strengths out towards? and how are in that achieving goals, and is that something that you're confident that you're being valued for? Let's look at the first week of December and just take a minute to consider and remember what you've been doing to prepare and set yourself up. We've onboarded many people in the last 2 months into Upwill, which is our Upwill CRM is the name of our I guess we'd say marketing agency. And really a lot of business owners tend to rely on them like they're going to be the magic and do everything for them, which sometimes works. But every single entrepreneur, every single business owner, every single person, even on a team in a corporation, needs to be responsible for their team themselves and how they're perceived and how that messaging gets out, and really creating and crafting something that strategically works. A lot of times entrepreneurs think it's a magic, something that's going to happen that's magic and just make everything change. And it really isn't necessarily true. We partnered the designing strengths because what was found was that people were finding their best messaging. They were finding the best ways to speak about things that fit how they did things, so that emotionally their clients could connect to how they did things. And it ended up being a really good fit. And people were able to get easier and faster towards the messaging that worked for them. So in the whole idea of starting for 2025, we've onboarded a bunch of people that were like, I want to be set and ready for 2025. And I want to be attracting clients, the right clients that I can truly help and work with. And I want the messaging, even a couple of the corporate clients that have come on board, they want to be prepared for 2025 and all the opportunity that's in it, and want to have the right messaging already out there. So that's been an exciting thing to move with. But what have you been doing? And if you need help and clarification, certainly that's something we can provide for you. The interesting thing is that opening yourself up to the idea of being in flow, because the other way of thinking comes with burnout and stress, so much pressure. Now, a great misunderstanding you might have is that by putting the intention, these are these dichotomies. These are these things that seem opposite, seem like they should make sense, but don't. And the opposite makes sense, right? To say, putting all this intention towards something adds stress and pressure that I otherwise wouldn't feel. And the opposite is true. So any of you that have been doing this know this and are singing praises right now, like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I learned that. And I'm one of them, right? So this idea that putting intention forward adds more pressure and stress might suggest that you haven't shifted your thinking from a judgmental source of thinking, of judging feelings and judging your behaviors as good or bad, and rather than looking at them as what is the result that you're getting. Considering what the result is you're getting, how well you're learning the things that weren't working, and then replacing them with things that do work, then to get you where you're trying to go, or have the result, because it's not always about getting somewhere. Sometimes it's just about having the result in someone else's life, in your child's life, in your spouse's life, in a friend's life. How many times have you had an adverse effect on somebody and wondered, what the heck did I do wrong? It's natural, it's normal, it's human. But then what can you learn from that? That if you learn from that, you don't have to do it again. How well have you automated that process of just owning it and letting it go and moving it to the rearview mirror? So these end of year and these end of seasons and these other times that we're ending and starting, instead of ending and starting, we practice being in a flow state to then also help automate the same on a microcosm way of just naturally moving into a way where you can have an intention and have that actually decrease the stress, because that gives you the space and the energy to do the mental work to set the tone and set the goal, and then do the work that it takes to get there, and set all of the smaller behaviors and notice the behaviors that are getting in the way and quickly address them. So it is simple. It's sometimes difficult to wrap your mind around. The reverse sometimes seems to make more sense than what really happens. That's why there's so much money been made on things like The Secret and other things. So looking forward and what to anticipate in 2025. We're going to keep this short and run on into this. It's take a few minutes just to make sure you're ready for whatever holiday you celebrate. You celebrate Christmas. My family celebrates Christmas or Hanukkah or any other holiday through in December. Just take a quick minute and make sure you're ready. Make sure you've gotten everything that you want, that you've done what you want for everyone. This year for me and my family is much more about time together than it is about things. My home, we don't want things. We want to disperse things, get rid of things, clean up, just make life simpler and easier. It's one of those years where we get to just really consider differently how we're going to impact each other in a positive way without just gifting. Now, at the same time, there's people that absolutely must have gifts, and that's important. So think about who those are in your life, no matter where you're at in that zone of gifting, and just make sure you've got it covered so that you're not running around at the last minute. That's a similar energy, right? How do you drift through preparing for anything? What you've been working on the last few months in preparation for the new year, and doing that in a flow state rather than a start and stop, that binary kind of ending, stopping and starting state, then you may already be automating some of these you already just be naturally flowing into this way of thinking. But if not, this is the time to continue moving there. So 2025, we've done all the work we probably need to by now to clean up the past year and to think about what that is. You have hopefully by now already accomplished or are in your final moments of accomplishing everything that you set to accomplish for this year. And you're already, now is the time to really turn up the volume on enjoying the current moments you have. And if you're planning and reflecting still through December, make sure you're spending the time to plan and imagine the feelings you're going to have. Imagine the gratitude you're going to have. Last week, you got to go through the experience, going through one of our processes called the Gratitude of Champions, where you really anchor in these gratitude behaviors to this emotional level that is much deeper than just a basic thought of gratitude or experience of gratitude. And it takes it much deeper into your life. And if you practice that, if you didn't, go back and take that on and DM me for the sheet if it helps you to have a piece of paper to do that with, and I'll send it to you. But now is really the time to begin to imagine and dream what it's going to feel like and visualize what it's going to feel like to start achieving things, and give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to really let go. This would be a great time in that sense of reflection to think through anything that you just haven't quite thought of that is important to let go of now in December before the new year, and really give yourself permission to really want something in 2025. Give yourself permission to have a dream, have a vision, have a goal, and have an intention for what your way of being is and how you want to affect others. Give yourself permission for something you haven't yet given yourself permission for. Maybe you've been feeling guilty about wanting a certain thing. And if that's because you don't want to give it to yourself before you give something else to someone else, then why not have both? Why not make the part of the reward system the trigger for the reward is that you get someone else something they want, that then gives you that permission and that freedom to give you what you want. And what if it were the other way around? By giving yourself what you want, you open up the ideation and for that other person to make sure you have what it is that you need to get them what they want to. These are complex strategies, difficult to talk about on just a simple podcast. If you're resonating with those ideas, or if those ideas, if you're in a position of I wish that would happen, or that were a reality, then reach out and let's have the conversation and talk about what it would take for you to open that up, because there are definitely possibilities. In the spirit of keeping it brief, and in the spirit of giving everyone their time and their opportunity to do this work, I'm going to close out here and talk about just remembering the importance of staying in flow state. Success in 2025 does not begin on January 1st. It starts with how you carry yourself through the end of December. Take small, intentional actions to stay aligned with your core values and open to new possibilities. And consider what those possibilities might be in 2025. And the next few weeks, as you close out this year, you've got us here to support and help. And if you have some thoughts or conflicts happening, DM me, put it in the comments of one of the clips of the show, or just send me a message, and let's jump on a call, figure out what it is that needs to be rewired, reworked, or restructured so that you get everything that you want and everyone that you know and love does as well. Happy December. We're right here, and you're not alone. We are together in this venture. I'm going to close on that one final note. There's this concept or idea that we are never alone, and that there is this interconnectedness to all things, and there's that conflict sometimes of how unique every individual is, and how that can also become a problem if you end up feeling lonely and afraid and set aside or anything else. So there's this idea that you are perfectly, wonderfully, amazing, and independently unique. You're more unique than 1 in a million, just like everyone else. And if we can embrace your uniqueness, if we can help you draw out that finest, best, most amazing part of yourself and actually aim yourself, work with yourself towards something of positive intention, something good. And if we can get more and more of you doing that, if more of you will work within your greatest self, God's intentions for the universe can actually become true. And amazingly positive things can happen if every individual is showing up in their most unique and wonderful self. That's just like everyone else in that they're unique. So let's start looking at the similarities between ourselves instead of the differences. Notice where we are common in that maybe we want the same things. Maybe we want the same values and the things are different. But find out what it is that is similar and stick with that. And then learn to gain understanding, gain compassion, gain kindness, and be the best version of you that you can be. If that seems elusive to you, or if that seems obvious to you, designing the greatest part of yourself through this theme of what is strong in you rather than fixing what's broken is an amazing and dynamic way to move forward. So cheers to you in December. Let's get started at looking at that proficient, beautiful, wonderful way of thinking now. Let's put the deficiency, fixed mindset of how to correct things and fix things in the rearview mirror, because in your best self, you will always heal, fix, and mend anything that's there that needs to be. Let's move into 2025 better people. That's it for today. Peace out.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of The Point with me, Jeff Spikes. Please visit jeffspikes.com for everything you would need to know to engage with me offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Point.